Good morning to you, and welcome. I'm glad you're here. This morning we have one of my favorite images in Jesus' stories from the Gospels of the children playing in the marketplace and calling out to each other. We played the flute for you and you wouldn't dance, and we mourned and you didn't weep with us. It's an example of wanting to have relationship on our own terms. When we have that experience with children, it's to be expected. I remember when my kids were little and wanted to play games. They wanted it to be specifically by the rules that they wanted. Yeah. I also remember when Jane and I were first married, and I wanted her to wash my pots and pans in a particular way because I was used to doing it myself. So I kept doing it myself. So it doesn't stop with being children. We grow up and still want things our own way. We grow up and still want relationship on our own terms. And it doesn't work that way. As Eva found out this past year in having a roommate in college, we don't always get to make the rules. Sometimes we get to compromise. The hope is that we can come to a middle place where we can agree on those rules together. The people were expecting something. When they went out to see John the Baptist and were wanting him to be a certain way and he wasn't, they criticized him for it. That was we played the flute and you wouldn't dance. And then Jesus came and they expected certain things of Messiah, and he wasn't that way. They complained, we mourned and you wouldn't mourn with us. Our expectations oftentimes get in the way of relationship. They oftentimes get in the way of our finding common ground with each other. We hear in our first reading at Zechariah one of the prophecies that played into the whole idea of who Messiah would be, talking about the king coming on a donkey. Well, a colt, the foal of a donkey. But the idea of the donkey, it wasn't just humbling. The donkey was the animal of everyday life. The horse was the animal of war. And so by coming into the city on the animal of everyday life, it was an acknowledgement of the kind of king that king would be. Someone more concerned with the daily lives of his people than with making war and doing grand things that kings do. As we come forward into Jesus' time and forward still into Paul's time, Paul is lamenting to his community in Rome about the human condition. The reality of being born in these amazing human bodies is that we kind of see the world through our own eyes, and it can be hard to learn to see it through another's eyes, to find that common ground of we instead of I. You may have heard people complain, why can't I fix my relationships? I can't fix my relationships because I can't fix we without you. It takes collaboration. It takes vulnerability. And that's not something we like to do, is be vulnerable. And as Jesus talks to his listeners about following in his steps, he gives them an example of living openly, of living in vulnerability, risking the wounds of our world to be the loving, amazing teacher and friend that he was. As we're called into that, we too are called into vulnerability in a world that doesn't often reward vulnerability. There's a reason why we close in on ourselves, why we wall ourselves off, because when we get hurt, it sucks. And so we seek to protect ourselves. But it also cuts us off from being in relationship in fullness, with the full integrity and authenticity of our whole selves. Building that foundation of trust and hope is difficult work. And so sometimes we just don't do it. Being called into this work of being Christ's followers is called to doing that hard work of finding our hearts in one another, seeing Christ reflected back to us in each other's eyes, seeing ourselves reflected back to us in each other's eyes. Finding that way of moving beyond our embodied experience of I, me, my, to find a community experience of ours and we and us. And not just with the in crowd or the people in our close circles, but with all those we meet. Risking encountering their authentic selves, accepting them for who they are, and loving that piece of the divine that is reflected back to us, no matter how dim it may have become. We look around our world as the West Slopes are burning, and we sought to celebrate our semi-quincentennial amidst a stage 2 fire warning in our area. There's a lot that can keep us from wanting to reach out in vulnerability in our world. There's a lot of hurt out there. The over 1,100 homes that have burned. It's hard to let that in. And yet we can weep with others when they're hurting. We can stand with others in solidarity, even if we don't have means to help beyond just being there. Our willingness to be vulnerable with each other does mean allowing hurt in, but it also reaps great rewards of living a life more fully, living lives of fulfillment, of getting to know people deeply, and it makes a huge difference. Anthony is one of those people that's really hard to get to know. Some of it is his autism spectrum disorder. Some of it is he's just pretty reserved. The people who make the effort to get to know him find that he has this amazing heart, that he's funny, that he'd pretty much do anything for you. Doing the work to get there can be a lot. On the surface, he can seem gruff and off-putting. And I hope that as time goes on, he's more willing to show who he is because he's an amazing person. Part of adoption is also that feeling of abandonment. Your birth parents either, in your mind, you weren't good enough that they could want you. And so this fear persists of not being good enough. And it doesn't matter how many years we tell him that he's this amazing person, or how many years we love him and want to hold him close. It'll still be a part of his reality. Eve has been struggling with that same thing. She does it more overtly. She talks to her therapist about it. Anthony talks to his therapist about video games. The work that we do to get to know each other is what makes relationship. That foundation of trust helps to create hope. It helps to create love. It helps make life worth living. And so with our readings this morning, challenging us and calling us not just to live life on our own terms, may we take that message into our hearts of allowing ourselves to see ourselves as more than just individuals, but allowing us to feel ourselves as community. The hope that we find, the enrichment that we find, the life that we find hope is more than enough to outweigh the hurts of our world. Amen.